The first call came at 2:13 a.m. My phone lit up on the desk beside my keyboard, and the screen showed my own number, my own name, like I'd somehow dialed myself in my sleep. I didn't answer it at first. I just stared at it until it stopped ringing, because something in me understood that if I picked up, whatever was on the other end would become real. I remember thinking that if I answered, whatever was happening would stop being a mistake. It rang again 30 seconds later. Same number. Same time stamp in the call log. Only this time, the voicemail icon appeared immediately after it stopped, like whoever called had left a message without waiting. I listened with my thumb hovering over the speaker button. All I heard was breathing. Not heavy. Not dramatic. Just the sound of someone holding a phone close to their face, trying to be quiet, and failing. I was 28 when this happened, and I was living alone for the first time in years. It wasn't the brave, liberating kind of alone. It was the kind that follows a breakup you didn't see coming, when your friends have their own lives, and you realize how loud an empty apartment can be. I took a late shift at a small medical billing office because it paid a little more and required less talking to people. The building was downtown, but our suite faced an alley, and after midnight that part of the street went dead. My job wasn't complicated. I handled after-hours intake, insurance pre-authorizations, urgent billing requests, the occasional call from a hospital admin who couldn't access a portal. Most nights, the phone didn't ring at all. When it did, it was usually a nurse reading off a case number in a tired voice. The office itself felt different at night. During the day it was a bright, normal place, low gray carpet, rows of desks, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look pale. At night the same lights seemed harsher, like they were meant to expose you. The HVAC clicked on and off. The refrigerator in the break room made a low rattling sound when the compressor kicked in. Looking back, the building never actually felt empty, I just didn't question why. And because I was the only one on the late shift, I liked routines. Little things that made the night predictable. I arrived at 11:30 p.m. I brewed 1 cup of coffee and set it beside my monitor. I checked the voicemail inbox for anything the day's staff missed. Then I set my phone face down, because the glow distracted me, and I worked. That first night, when my phone rang at 2:13 a.m. with my own number, I assumed it was a carrier glitch. I'd seen weird things before, calls labeled unknown that were obviously spam, numbers that looked familiar but weren't. Spoofing was common. Scammers did it to make you answer. But spoofing your own number felt personal. Still, I told myself it was random. An algorithm. A bad coincidence. I shouldn't have listened to the voicemail. I shouldn't have replayed the breathing a second time just to confirm I wasn't imagining it. But it was late, and I was alone, and the sound of someone else being present, even in a recording, pulled at something in my brain that didn't care about logic. I deleted the voicemail. I blocked my own number, which felt stupid, because you can't really block yourself. Then I went back to work. At 2:13 a.m. the next night, my phone rang again. Same number. My number. I felt the moment before it happened, like the air in the room changed. Like my body recognized a pattern before my mind did. I didn't let it ring out this time. I answered. Hello. I said, keeping my voice level. For a second there was nothing but a faint static, the kind you get when a call connects through too many lines. Then, very softly, I heard my own voice say my name. Not in the way I say it. Not with my cadence. But undeniably my voice, close enough that my stomach tightened. It sounded like it was coming from a recording played through a cheap speaker. Hello. I said again, and my voice came out sharper than I meant. The line went dead. No click. No disconnect tone. Just silence, like a TV being muted. I stared at my phone screen until it went dark. Then I checked the call log, because I needed proof it had happened. Incoming call, me. Time, 2:13 a.m. Duration, 0:07. I remember thinking, very plainly, that I didn't like how exact it was. Not around 2. Not after 2. Exactly 2:13. The kind of time you notice. The kind of time someone chooses. The next day, in the harsh daylight of my kitchen, I tried to recreate it. I called myself from a friend's phone. It showed my friend's number, like it should. I tried turning my phone off and on. I updated my carrier settings. I toggled silence unknown callers on and off. I did all the simple things you do when you need to feel like you have control. I told myself someone was spoofing numbers and got unlucky. Or lucky, depending on what they wanted. The part one didn't tell myself, because it felt dramatic, because it sounded like a story you'd hear and roll your eyes at, was that it felt like someone had moved from random spam into something that knew me. That night at work, I kept my phone face up. At 2:12 a.m. I watched the screen like I was waiting for a jump scare in a movie. My heart didn't race, it slowed down. My body got quiet, preparing. At 2:13, it rang. My number. This time, I didn't answer. I let it ring until it stopped. A voicemail appeared immediately. I waited a full minute before listening. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted the sound to cool off in my head, to make it less immediate. Maybe I wanted to pretend I had a choice. When I hit play, I heard a room tone, soft, enclosed. Like someone sitting in a car with the windows up. A distant hum. Then my voice again. Not saying my name this time. Saying something else. Don't pick up, my voice whispered. It wasn't a clean recording. There were tiny artifacts, like someone had clipped it from a longer message. There was a faint echo behind it. And after that, just breathing again. I ended the voicemail and stared at my office phone, like it could explain anything. My first thought, my most reasonable thought, was that it was pulled from my own voicemail greeting. Some carriers let you access greetings. Maybe I'd used my voice somewhere publicly, an old video, a message, something. But "don't pick up" wasn't in my voicemail greeting. It wasn't in any recording I could think of. And the most unsettling part was how it hit me after I'd already picked up once. Like it had adjusted. I deleted the message, then went into my phone settings and changed my voicemail PIN, even though I hadn't used voicemail in years. I changed passwords. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything I could think of. I sat there in a bright office at 3 a.m., changing digital locks, because it felt better than sitting still. The calls didn't stop. They came every night at 2:13. Not on weekends, because I didn't work weekends. But at home, I would wake up at 2:10 sometimes without knowing why and lie there watching the ceiling until the call came. When it didn't, because I wasn't at work, because maybe it was tied to something, I would still stay awake, listening for it like it was a sound in the wall. At work, I tried to ignore it. I tried to treat it like a glitch. I wrote it down in a notebook with timestamps, because something in me wanted a record, wanted evidence for the future version of myself who would decide whether this was real or just a spiral. Night 1, voicemail breathing. Night 2, my voice says my name. Night 3, voicemail, don't pick up. Night 4, no voicemail. Call rings, disconnects. Night 5, voicemail, no voice, just the sound of fingers tapping lightly on something, like someone drumming on a desk. Night 6, voicemail, silence. Not nothing. Actual recorded silence, the kind that has texture. The line was open. On night 7, I decided to do something I hated doing. I told someone. I called my sister in the afternoon and tried to make it sound casual. I've been getting weird calls, I said, stirring coffee I didn't want. From my own number. There was a pause on the line. Like, a glitch, she asked. That's what I thought. But it's happening every night at the same time. What time? 2:13. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, she said carefully. That's not normal. I felt relief just hearing someone else say it. She told me to contact the carrier. She told me to file a police report if it kept happening. She told me not to answer anymore. I didn't tell her about hearing my own voice. That part felt too intimate. Too easy to judge. After we hung up, I tried calling my carrier. I got put in the usual loop, automated menus, long hold music, a polite rep who sounded bored until I explained. Your own number, he repeated. Yes. That's unusual, he said, like he was searching for a script and not finding one. Do you have any call forwarding set up? No. Have you installed any third-party call apps? No. He asked me to reboot my phone. He asked me to reset network settings. He asked me to run a malware scan. He told me spoofing was common and that there wasn't much they could do, because spoofing doesn't require access to your account. It's just the caller ID, he said. It can be faked. That conversation should have reassured me. Instead, it felt like whatever was calling now knew I was trying to stop it. But why my number? I asked. It could be random. I hung up and stared at my phone. Everything could be random if you wanted it to be. By the second week, my routine had changed. I started turning my phone off at 2:10. The first night I did it, nothing happened. No call, obviously. I felt stupidly proud of myself, like I'd outsmarted something. At 2:20, I turned the phone back on. There were no missed calls. But there was a voicemail notification. I froze with the phone in my hand. You can't get a voicemail if your phone is off, I told myself. Not like that. Not immediately. Unless the call went to voicemail because the network still routed it. Unless it rang and the carrier handled it without my device. I played it anyway, because of course I did. This time, there was no breathing. There was background sound, faint office ambience, and then my voice again. Only now it wasn't a whisper. It was my normal speaking voice, calm and flat, like I was reading something. Stop turning it off, my voice said. I can still leave messages. I felt a cold flush run up my neck. My finger hovered over delete. I deleted it. Then I played it again from the deleted messages folder, because I needed to be sure I'd heard it right. I did. That night I locked myself in the bathroom stall and sat on the closed toilet lid for almost 10 minutes, listening to the building's plumbing hiss and trying to breathe without making noise. It hit me then, not as a thought but as a feeling, this wasn't happening in a vacuum. Somebody knew my patterns now. Somebody knew what I tried. The next night, I left my phone on but put it in my bag across the room. I told myself I wouldn't look at it. I would let it ring. I wouldn't feed it my attention. At 2:13, it rang. I didn't move. It rang again. And again. It kept ringing in short bursts, like whoever was calling was hanging up and redialing, not letting the voicemail pick up. Over and over, my own ringtone echoing in the empty office. It was the first time the calls broke the pattern. The first time they felt impatient. I walked to my bag and pulled the phone out. Missed calls, 12. All from my number. Then a voicemail icon appeared. I listened. No voice. Just the sound of a chair rolling. A squeak. A soft click as it hit something. Then, faintly, the sound of a fluorescent light buzzing. The exact same sound that hung above my desk. I stared at the ceiling. The light above me buzzed, steady, indifferent. I told myself it was coincidence. That office buildings have the same sounds everywhere. That anyone could record a light buzzing and a chair rolling. But the recording had that enclosed quality again, like it was captured close to the mic. Like whoever had recorded it was nearby. In the corner of the office, the break room door sat half open, dark inside. I hadn't opened it all night. I stayed at my desk until 6 a.m., with the office lights turned up as bright as they would go. After that, my mind started doing something I couldn't control. It started building maps. If someone was in the building, where could they hide? If they weren't, how were they getting these sounds? If it was just spoofing, why the timing? If it was someone from the office, who knew I worked nights? I became aware of how much of my life was visible to other people in small, quiet ways. My schedule posted in a shared calendar. My badge access recorded by the building. My social media posts that mentioned night shift as a throwaway complaint. The fact that I ordered the same coffee at the same cafe at 10 p.m. on my way in. The world suddenly felt full of seams. One night, I checked my call log at 2:05 and saw something that made my throat tighten. An outgoing call. From my phone. To my own number. Timestamp, 2:13 a.m. from the previous night. Duration, 0:07. My hands went cold. I hadn't made any outgoing calls. I hadn't even unlocked my phone. I stared at the log as if it would change. Then I remembered something I'd learned years earlier: some spoofed calls show up weird in logs. Some carriers display incoming spoof calls as outgoing in certain apps. It could be a display error. A sync issue. I held on to that explanation like it was a handrail. But it planted a new fear, quieter and worse than the idea of a stranger dialing me. The fear that my phone, my device, the thing I used to keep my life in order, could be made to tell a story that wasn't true. The fear that I wouldn't know the difference. That was when it stopped feeling like a phone problem, and started feeling local. On the 15th night, my office phone rang at 2:13. Not my cell. The landline on my desk, the one that only internal staff and hospital contacts had. The caller ID displayed my extension. My own extension. I didn't even breathe for a second. My brain stalled, like it couldn't process that kind of circular information. The office phone rang 4 times. I watched the green light blink. Then it stopped. A second later, the voicemail light on the office phone turned on. I reached for the handset and pressed the button to check messages with fingers that didn't feel like mine. The automated voice began its usual greeting. You have one new message. There was a click. And then, unmistakably, I heard myself. Not my cell voicemail. Not a clipped phrase. A full sentence, in my own speaking voice, like I was sitting in the chair across from my desk. You're alone because you make it easy, my voice said. Then a pause. Then another sound, the soft plastic click of a keyboard key being pressed. Once. Twice. And in the background, quiet but clear, the elevator dinged. Our elevator was down the hall. Its chime had a specific pitch. I'd heard it 1,000 times. My skin prickled. The elevator dinged again, closer this time in the recording, as if the door had opened on our floor. Then the message ended. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back and hit the cubicle wall. The office was silent. I looked down the hallway. No lights. No footsteps. No elevator sound. The building's motion sensors were slow, they didn't turn on until you were nearly under them. The corridor remained dark. I grabbed my badge and walked toward the elevator anyway. I don't know why. Anger, maybe. Or the need to prove there wasn't anyone there. The motion lights clicked on one by one as I moved. The elevator doors were closed. I pressed the call button. Nothing. I pressed again. Still nothing. The elevator panel above the doors was dark, which meant the elevator car wasn't currently on our floor. It was somewhere else in the building. I stared at the doors and listened. No mechanical hum. No distant movement. My reflection in the brushed metal looked warped and pale. I went back to my desk and sat down very carefully, like sudden movement might wake something. At 2:20, my cell phone buzzed. Missed call, me. One voicemail. I didn't listen. I couldn't stand the idea of hearing my own voice again in the dark. I turned the phone face down and kept my hands flat on the desk until my shift ended. The next morning, I asked the building security guard if anyone had come up to our floor overnight. He glanced at his monitor and shook his head. Just you, he said. Any elevator activity? I asked, trying to sound casual. He squinted. Elevators run all night. People come and go. On 5? He leaned closer, clicked something, then shrugged. Not much. Couple deliveries earlier. Not after 1. I nodded like that made sense, and went upstairs with my stomach tight. That afternoon, I changed my number. It was something I'd avoided because it felt like admitting defeat. Like letting a stranger rearrange my life. But I was tired. I was sleeping poorly. I was jumpy. My hands shook sometimes when my phone lit up unexpectedly, even with normal calls. I went to the carrier store, sat across from a young employee with perfect hair, and explained what was happening without mentioning the voice. He nodded sympathetically and told me I was doing the right thing. They issued me a new number. I left feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That night, at work, I waited for 2:13 with a strange sense of quiet hope. At 2:13, my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it. My heart did not race, it sank. I didn't answer. A voicemail icon appeared. I waited. Then, against my better judgment, I listened. There was static. A faint room tone. Then my voice, softer than before, as if the speaker was close to the mic. You can't fix it by changing the label, my voice said. And then, very clearly, another voice, one I didn't recognize, whispered into the phone. Answer. The message ended. My hands were cold. I couldn't feel my fingertips. For a long time I sat there watching the office door, trying to decide if I was being watched right then. If this was someone outside the building or inside it. If this was someone who had access to systems I didn't understand or just a person with patience and a willingness to be cruel. I didn't answer any calls for the rest of the night. At 6 a.m., I went straight home and put my phone in a drawer. I didn't quit immediately. I told myself I could power through it. That it was only happening at work, tied to the landline system, tied to something in the office. But I started noticing other things, small at first. A missed call notification at 2:13 on nights I wasn't at work. A voicemail that was empty but lasted 12 seconds, like an open line. Once, at 2:13, my phone vibrated with a call and my screen showed my mother's name, only I knew she was asleep, and when I checked the number it wasn't hers. It was mine, spoofed again. After that, I started leaving my phone in another room at night. I started sleeping with the bedroom door locked, which was a habit I hadn't had since childhood. I became someone who listened to silence too carefully. One day, I found myself standing in line at a grocery store, and when the overhead speaker crackled on, I flinched hard enough that the person behind me asked if I was okay. I realized then it wasn't just the calls. It was what they had done to my sense of normal. They had made me unsure of what was coming from where. The climax of it wasn't violent. It wasn't cinematic. It was a moment of simple, unbearable clarity. It happened on a Tuesday, near the end of the month, when I was alone in the office and the air felt stale and heavy from the building's night mode. At 2:12, my phone buzzed, not a call. A notification. Voicemail transcription. A voicemail had been left without the phone ringing. The preview text appeared on my screen like an accusation. The office had gone so quiet that even the lights sounded loud. Look up. My throat tightened so fast I felt like I was swallowing air. I stared at the words. I could have ignored it. I could have deleted it. I could have told myself it was a scam, automated, random. But my eyes moved before my mind caught up. I looked up toward the glass wall of the conference room across from my desk. In the dark, the glass reflected the office behind me. And in that reflection, just over my left shoulder, I saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. They weren't close enough for details. Just a shape. A person-shaped absence in the dim light. But what made it worse, what made my stomach drop into something cold and empty, was how still they were. Not shifting weight. Not moving. As if they'd been there for a while. As if they were waiting for me to notice. I didn't turn around. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe because I understood that if I turned and they weren't there, I would never trust myself again. Maybe because if I turned and they were there, I didn't know what I'd do. I kept my eyes locked on the reflection. The figure didn't move. My phone buzzed again in my hand. Another voicemail transcription preview, arriving like a second step in a set of instructions. Don't turn. The office was silent except for the low hum of the lights. In the reflection, the figure's head tilted. Not much. Just enough to look curious. I felt tears prick behind my eyes, not from fear exactly, but from the helplessness of being guided like that. Like I was part of a routine someone had rehearsed. My phone buzzed a third time. Answer. And then the call came, 2:13 exactly. This time, the caller ID showed my new number. My own name. I didn't answer. I didn't decline. I held the phone so tightly the edges cut into my palm. In the reflection, the figure took one step forward. The motion lights in the hallway did not turn on. Which meant they hadn't crossed the sensor line yet. They were still standing in the dark. I did the only thing I could think of. I stood up slowly, keeping my eyes on the glass, and walked toward the emergency stairwell door, backward, like I was afraid to show my back even to a reflection. My chair rolled slightly as I moved away from it, and the sound seemed too loud. The figure stopped. The call stopped ringing. For a single second, the silence was absolute. Then my office phone, the landline, rang. Once. Twice. On the third ring, I turned my back to the reflection and pushed through the stairwell door. The heavy door slammed shut behind me with a metallic echo that bounced down the concrete shaft. I took the stairs 3 at a time, not caring how loud I was, not caring if I tripped. I didn't stop until I was in the lobby, where the security guard looked up at me with alarm. "You okay?" he asked. I tried to speak and realized my mouth was dry. "There's someone upstairs," I managed. His face changed. He stood up, hand already reaching for his radio. "What floor?" "5, I said. "Right now." He called it in. Another guard moved toward the elevator. Someone asked me to stay in the lobby. I sat on a vinyl chair under fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly and waited with my phone in my lap. At 2:19, it buzzed. Voicemail. No transcription preview this time. Just the icon. I didn't open it. I didn't want to hear what my voice would say next. Security did a sweep. They found nothing. No open doors. No forced entry. No one in the hallways, conference rooms, stairwells. The guard told me gently that sometimes reflections play tricks. That stress makes people see things. I nodded along, because arguing would have meant saying the words out loud. But I saw what I saw. And even if it had been a trick of glass and exhaustion, the voicemails hadn't been. The pattern hadn't been. I quit the next day. I didn't give a detailed reason. I said the schedule wasn't working for me. I said I needed something different. They didn't push. Maybe they were relieved. Maybe they already knew something was wrong with the building systems and didn't want to talk about it. Maybe they didn't want to hear a story that would spread. I moved apartments a month later, partly because the lease was up and partly because the nights in my old place felt too thin. Like sound carried too easily. I kept my new number. For a while, the calls stopped. I started sleeping again. I stopped checking the clock as often. I almost believed it was over. Until one night, months later, when I was halfway awake and my phone lit up on the nightstand. 2:13 a.m. Incoming call. The caller ID didn't show my number this time. It showed a blocked line. But the name on the screen was mine. And before it even rang a second time, a voicemail icon appeared, already waiting, like someone had been listening long enough to know I wouldn't answer. I didn't play it. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, smelling something faint and bitter in the air that didn't belong in my apartment at all. Coffee. Fresh coffee. And somewhere in the silence, my phone vibrated once, soft, patient, like it was letting me know it could do this forever. Sometimes I still wake up at 2:12, before anything rings.